I click the links for Odyssey, BitChute, join the channel. So, Hollywood baby sacrifice to Moloch. There was the Broken Lizard guys who did Super Troopers, Slammin' Salmon, and Beer Fest, and they did another one where they visit an island or have an island resort. They're funny movies. They're kind of lowbrow humor, but they're fun. And there was a scene in Slammin' Salmon where the guy is gets a nose job, and he was hired before when he had this big honking nose, and that was part of the charm. And then he gets this nose job and he got fired. And I didn't get the joke at the time. It came out in 2010. I get it now. It's in reference to Jennifer Grey, who was a huge star from like 1984 to 1989. It was a weirdly brief time period. And the reason I'm covering this is, I mean, I know it's not you got to be of a certain over, I don't know, 40 to be like on the 80s films wavelength. Well, it's because 80s films were just a whole different vibe. It was just a lot of cocaine fueled creativity back then, where they just tried to make fun, dumb movies, and they mostly succeeded in making a lot of movies that have some rewatchability. Yeah, I mean, Caddyshack was an 80s movie, and that the Slammin' Salmon, which came out in 2010, I watched a few minutes of it. You couldn't make it today because it's politically incorrect today, and that was 12 years ago. That's how fast the window has shifted to the left. And when the pendulum swings back, the only way to swing it back is do the South Park or the early It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia before they completely turn into just cucked pussies, which they totally have after season 9. Is the South Park method. The early South Park is just come out the gate just being as offensive as possible, and just kind of stick to those guns and say, yeah, this is who we are. Like you knew it right out the start. So if you weren't on board with it, it's like, this isn't for you. It's going to be offensive. And the Mary Sue tried to, it's time to shut down South Park. Oh, just go fuck off, Mary Sue. You bunch of useless kvetching yentas. So the 80s had a whole lot of good movies, and you're never going to see good movies like that again after 2016, especially after 2020, to the extent of, I say, Hollywood is over. I keep repeating that, and I think finally people are going to catch on and go like, oh yeah, everything that comes out of Hollywood it's not all dog crap, but it's not good. Like, you're not going to get anything that... It's not like we don't have a huge library of films from the history, from the beginning of, black and whites to when they kind of peaked, I don't know, maybe in the late 80s, early 90s, to compare, and to compare it to stuff that happened after 2019-ish, around that era. It's like, oh, wow, it's really taking a hit, and there's no reason for it, because you guys have got better technology and bigger budgets. It's like, movies should be better and better, but you forget cultural Bolshevism, which is making everything crap. So to that extent, I say yes, Hollywood is over, and I stick by that. So I mean, but it's like there's no shortage of movies. You can go back and watch. Gosh, there's so many classic films from like the 70s to 80s, just those 2 decades. Like, you never run out of material to watch, and then you can go back and watch early black and white films, and like, you never need to watch anything after, so whatever time period you want to pick. So that's kind of why I'm covering the Jennifer Grey thing. To be like a huge Hollywood star from 84 to 89 is kind of weird. And okay, so Hollywood baby sacrifices to Moloch. What happened was the Dirty Dancing star, she was in Dirty Dancing, which I guess was kind of a chick flick, Red Dawn, which was kind of for dudes, and then the other one, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which was kind of for everyone. So she was in those, and those were 3 huge hits. And then she did a dozen movies after that. Don't get me wrong, she's probably continued to act for a long time after that. But those were the three hits where she was a mega monster hit. And the reason I bring up the nose is because that was her thing. She was, which Slammin' Salmon was making fun of. She was in those hit movies with her nose being the way it was. I guess it was, I didn't even notice at the time. It must have been crooked or hooked or a little too something. Like, I don't think anyone noticed at the time. It's like, you're in 3 huge movies with this nose, and that nose is how people identify you, I guess. And obviously people didn't have a problem with it because you got cast for those 3 huge movies. And then her mom pressured her into getting a nose job at 26. Like at 26, you should be like, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. I'm the cute little perky Jewish girl who's cast in these films. Why would you throw that away? And that's the thing that Slam and Salmon was referencing. In fact, every movie that Broken Lizard made now, you think about it, they had like 4 big hits. None of those are politically correct. In fact, you can look at a ton of movies made before 2016 and realize, oh, it's like the whole, almost everything made in Hollywood is no longer PC because cultural Marxism. Anyway, so she got her nose job, and then suddenly, like, it totally changed her face to the point where, like, this is what she used to look like. She was just this, I don't know, she was what she was. It's like I didn't even notice what was wrong about it, that she didn't like it. But then she was in all these great 80s movies. It's like she was one of the 80s actors that were part of that. There was a few dozen 80s actors, and I mean, some of them OD'd on coke and stuff like that, that were just kind of known to have that 80s vibe. What was the other movie? Less Than Zero. There's a whole bunch of actors who were in that also, and Matthew Broderick was one of them. And what a classic film, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And like Matthew Broderick, you look at him, that's not a guy who has a lot of star power, but he was in some big hits. So credit to him. So she decides to get a nose job at 26. It's like, what an insanely bad decision that would. If you were auditioning for roles and you had this big honking hook nose and you weren't getting the roles, that would be one thing. But after you already were in 3 huge hits, you decide to get a nose job? That's insane. Anyway, so the whole thing of this is she's bragging about having an abortion, which is, one thing to get it. It's, she sounds like she was a little bit of a coke snorting cum dumpster in the 80s, as, a lot of people were. So, that's one thing to go get that done, but it's the second level to brag about, or not brag about it, but like, we're taking back the power, and like, you made a baby sacrifice to Moloch. I mean, that's like, it's kind of goes through this function box where they say they have their own internal echo chamber where they say it and it sounds one way in their head, and then we're outsiders, we look at it and we go, oh, so you sacrificed a baby to Satan? That's kind of what it looks like to us. So her claim to fame was her nose, and being I guess a coke whore, cum dumpster in the 80s. She's talking about going to all these clubs and stuff, and it seemed like that was a big thing in the 80s. I mean, it's like, it might have been like big and publicly known that these people were partying quite a bit, but it's like that partying didn't end in the 80s. People didn't suddenly say, oh, we're gonna, like, if you're gonna go into Hollywood, you'd be better off being some kind of hardcore Christian who's like, oh, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I get married young and very chaste. It's like, that's kind of the only way to survive in Hollywood, is you don't want to just kind of fall for every little thing. So she's in those 3 huge films. Red Dawn was good, and I think Dirty Dancing and Red Dawn had the same lead character, that guy who was in what was that bar movie? Oh, God, I forget the name of it. That people, just a stupid bar movie where he's like a security guard at some bar. I forget the name of it. So I think it was the same guy who was in both of those huge hits and Ferris Bueller's Day Off. So huge from 84 to 89, which is such a brief period, 5-year period to be a huge star. And you get famous on your hook and beak, and then you get a nose job and then disappear from big roles. That didn't kind of make a whole lot of sense to me. So Hollywood feminism is like, these people get in focus. These people tell you who they are, and it sounds, everything they come up with, because they're in this deep echo chamber of, we're taking back feminism, like vagina candles. That's so insane that can only happen when when Gwyneth Paltrow came out with something so ridiculous. It's like, you don't get feedback in your daily life. Like, every idea you come up with, someone is saying, like, you're talking to your personal assistants and people in your inner circle, like, you're not getting any honest feedback. And to be fair, like, she came out with the twat candles, and I'm sure it sold very well. Like, so I'm sure the candles were like $100 for a hunk of wax. She goes, this smells like my twat. Okay, great. I mean, that's like, you're so deep in an echo chamber where you can say such insane things. And we're taking back feminine womanhood, or our power and our agency, and you just hate women. It's like, no, but I mean, just some things you don't need to talk about. It's just ridiculous. It just means that you're surrounded by Hollywood yes people who will say anything as long as, they're on your salary, so you're never getting honest feedback. That's kind of Hollywood. Feminism is they support Epstein and Weinstein and all those other predators in Hollywood, and like openly applaud those guys because they're part of the Hollywood machine that's putting money in their pocket. They get abortions, but then they come out and they lecture us on, ethics and morals. Like, you guys supported Weinstein for decades because he was making you money. You didn't try to put a stop to that. And then you think that you can lecture us. Getting an abortion is one thing, but bragging about it is kind of something else. Hollywood is just on a different level, and I think people are starting to see that now because you've got it's like it used to be a monologue where Hollywood and the media was producing this narrative and there was no way to counter it, because even the media magazines that would talk about Hollywood were still on the same page with Hollywood. But now we have, YouTube, Odyssey, BitChute, and all these other alternative platforms where you're able to give these people feedback and look at them and go like, yeah, it's kind of weird, some of the things that Hollywood claims are their values, and they're like, these are the same people who are flying to Epstein's Island, and then they're talking about abortion rights. As a constitutional issue, it's a states' rights issue. It's a clear constitutional. There's really no choice to that. The original decision was a bad decision. It was based in bad law, and there's like a bunch of conspiracy theories as to why they decided that. It's 50 years ago. But anyway, flow back to the 80s. We should have an 80s movies night. There's just so many fun 80s movies. Who was that other guy who was in Better Off Dead? That wasn't Matthew Broderick. Who was that guy? He was in that recent remake where the Hot Tub Time Machine. I think that was him. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next episode.